All right, I've had numerous requests to do this. I'm getting over a bit of a cold, so forgive my voice and my nasal passages. But a lot of people have asked me for an updated library tour over the years. I did one a long time ago, which isn't very good, over a live stream in 2021. But as since I've moved out here, I haven't necessarily shown off the books. So I'm going to try to get through this as quick as I can. Okay. So, way up here, the first book you'll see beside the sleeping cat is Edwin Abbott's Flatland, which is one of those books I read at an influential age, and I desperately need to talk about more on the channel. And if you see any of these volumes that are of any particular interest that you want me to discuss, do let me know down in the comments. So there's Flatland, incredible book. Things Fall Apart, I've not necessarily read yet. We have here The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Ultimate Edition that Ahab had gifted me. I have only read the first volume of 5, I believe that's in there, and that was several years ago, almost a decade ago. In fact, I want to say exactly a decade ago since I've done that. We got The Education of Henry Adams. I bought that because it was cheap. It was about $1 at Friends Library, and was meaning to read it. I buy several of these books at used bookshops with the intent of reading them eventually. So that's a part of the reason why you see so many. We have 4 of Richard Adams's books. If you can't see the other 2, apart from Shardik and Worship Down, that's, I think, The Girl in the Swing and Plague Dogs. I think that's what they are. Yeah, that's what they are. Haven't read any of these yet. I intend to eventually, so we'll see. We just got a little collection of Aesop's fables and some Greek tragedy and kitties getting antsy. And this volume here, Small Craft by Logan Albright, is a self-published book by a YouTuber on here who is probably, without question, the best booktuber that I've ever encountered. And I've actually interacted with this fellow. He's a very nice man and a pretty good writer as well. Very good characterization in that particular book. We have Little Women, which I've been meaning to read for a book club for about 5 years, but I just haven't gotten round to it. I wonder if even I'm starting a blood feud with this person because I haven't read it. I have no idea. And we got a couple other Louisa May Alcott's, the 8 Cousins, and the one that she put out after her death. That was supposedly very good. We have Horatio Alger. I've talked about him before, the rags to riches chap who wrote over 100 novels, and the sort of dime novels that surround, that based around, I guess, a young boy who earns money through various means. And a couple random books there, and then we got Kingsley Amis, whom I used to like a lot when I was in my youth, but I haven't really read all that much of him lately, so I couldn't tell you anything about him now. So, there's that. This book here, The Best Short Stories of the Modern Age, that's one of many books in this collection that I borrowed from my advanced art history teacher. He is actually one of my many mentors in life. Taught me a great deal, and I respect him highly. He had an immense library, and I asked if I could borrow a few titles, and I neglected to give them back. And of course, I can't do that now because, well, I'm out of school, have been so for about 6 or 8 years, and I just decided to keep that volume right there. Moving on past a few other things, we have Isaac Asimov's Foundation books, which no doubt Josephine's going to hound me for not reading. My time's often very limited these days, and when I do have time to read, I end up usually writing or doing something else because, well, depending on the circumstances, reading does take a lot of energy out of you. So I will get around to it at some point, so don't you worry there. And then there's a couple other Asimov books right over there. Got a Lego T-Rex from an old set from I don't know how many years ago. That just is a shelf guard. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, along with a book about a dog, and one that's autographed. Actually, this Thea Astley book is autographed. I think it is. Wait a minute. Yeah, right there. So that's potentially worth nothing because it's an unknown author, but nevertheless, it's a cool thing to have. For Jane Austen, not read Jane Austen. I know Ahab says I would generally like her, and such. Just I don't really have the time to do it. Past the Life of St. Teresa of Avila, we have Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which is a book I read at a very formative age, but have not talked about at all on this channel. That's actually one of my favorite books. I may have to reread it at some point and do a review of it, just to tell you how much I actually do love it. So there's that there, along with Bacon's The New Atlantis and some James Baldwin stuff. You all remember this book now, don't you? I can't laugh too much because those laughs turn the mortify into coughs. So I'm sort of buggered in that regard. Empire of the Sun, that's the only book I have by James Ballard, or J.G. Ballard, whatever you say. I've got Balzac. I'm yet to read Balzac. I have a few of his. Lost Illusions is particularly interesting because it is about a poet, and I'm a writer, so that may be my first. And then we have basically a very small Clive Barker collection, started by Ahab with the Damnation Game, and then extended by him also with the Books of Blood, and then partially extended by me with Thief of Always. I'm yet to read Clive Barker. I'm sure he's great. Ahab, just as you say, and I'm sure Layla will like him as well, but very limited time these days, and I'll get around to it. If I haven't read anything yet, in all probability, if I do have a spare moment, I will get around to it. But yeah, so there's a few Oz books along with some other random things, miscellaneous stuff here and there. And Looking Backward is a utopian fiction that's very boring. In fact, I didn't even finish it. That's how boring it was. And I decided not to refer back to it. Got some Arnold Bennett right here. Clayhanger is fantastic. Not sure about the other one, Anna of Five Towns, but we'll see. Got the Ambrose Bierce collected stories, which who's one of the pioneers of weird fiction. I know he invented Carcosa, which is a destination referenced by Lovecraft, among others. And another fellow here, Algernon Blackwood. I used to have a penguin of his, but for some reason there was a printing issue, and half the cover exposed the pages, and so I had to get another one, and I haven't necessarily gotten another one yet. Random assortment of books there, and then we get to one of my favorite writers, at least from my past. I haven't read him recently, but Pierre Boulle. He's most well known for these two books, Planet of the Apes and Bridge Over River Kwai, which have both been made into movies. But more interesting, I find these efforts, The Garden on the Moon and The Ears of the Jungle. Very interesting science fiction and Vietnam War books. They're novels. And, I recommend you check him out if you haven't already. Have some Paul Bowles and a random book about monkeys, which I may or may not read someday. We have, one of the Sherlock Holmes pastiches because it's referenced in one of the stories, and I figure I may well read it one day. Haven't read it yet. Just a collection of short stories. Bradbury. Not the biggest Bradbury fan, but hopefully one of these days I may get into them. I don't know. A couple random books, and then this here, Little Jean of France, is a children's book that I read a long time ago at my cousin's house. I remember taking it with me for some reason there and reading it, but that's that. Utopia for Realists by Rutger Bregman is a book I reference in my current novel I'm working on, so that's why I have it. And we got some Bronte here, Charlotte Bronte, Jane Eyre, which I read the first chapter of and about depressed myself beyond words, and I decided not to go on with her. Got, more Brontes and such. These editions here, those are Hesperus classics, the ones that with the white spine and the colored top. I collect those, so that's the reason why I have a bunch of them. Just a couple of random books, and then some Bill Bryson over there. He said to be very funny. I read some of his book on Australia, but not all of it. And then, more stuff there. John Buchan, Pearl Buck, a few random things. Some Anthony Burgess, which I endeavored to read. A Clockwork Orange. And I had a different version of it. One that had the missing chapter. But the only problem with that was that it did not have an index or glossary at the back of it. So I had no idea what the hell I was reading. And so after about 60 pages, I just gave up. That was about 8 or 9 years ago. And I haven't referred to him since. These other Burgess books, Logan Albright likes Burgess as a writer, so I have a bit more faith in that regard there. Secret Garden, and then we get a bunch of Edgar Rice Burroughs books, and my Alf right there. I've read only the Caspak or Capsack, however you call it, trilogy. They're all right. They're fun little adventures, pulpy type things. Not great literature by any means, but they're okay. They're fine. Obviously, one of my favorites of all time, probably the equivalent of a religious text to me, Samuel Butler's Erewhon. I'm from Erewhon, if you catch my drift, on the last side of Erewhon. Never mind. And then we also have A Werewolf Flesh, which is another book of his, which I've not read. One of the more interesting books in my library, The Best of John W. Campbell, and I know Ahab has been interested in this particular title because this book includes Who Goes There, which is the story that inspired The Thing. And I read that story many years ago and thoroughly enjoyed it. I haven't read anything else out of there, but I've kept this volume all these years for that very reason. So there's that. We have some Camus, which I have to keep because I don't like Camus at all, but I have to keep these because they were given to me as a gift by a YouTuber who's no longer practicing. So I have to keep this. Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. I read it once. I really, 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 really liked it, but I have not read it since, so I have no idea how I'll feel about it. And then just a couple of random books, Alice in Wonderland, and then we have here The Horse's Mouth by Joyce Carey, which is a book my uncle, the writer, not the uncle who's living with us, who's infirmed, suggested I read. Took me about 10 years to find that book, and I haven't read it yet, so hopefully it'll be good. This book atop here, Bliss by Peter Carey. The main reason I have that is because, well, supposedly it had themes that were very similar to the book I am writing, but the more I looked into it, the less it seemed to be the case. So I have it here, not in the actual collection, because I may read it once and then get rid of it. I don't know. We'll see. There we go, Willa Cather and Don Quixote. And then once we get past that, we have one of my favorite writers ever, Paul du Chaillu. I've talked about him extensively. African explorer, discovered the gorilla, also was ripped off by that person up there. And I just love du Chaillu. I may have to do a whole video about him at some point, going into what a wonderful man he was. Inspired King Kong. That's probably my first introduction to him, is because he inspired Merian C. Cooper with his book Exploration of Africa. And then King in Yellow, a few other things, Canterbury Tales. Another book that belonged to my art history teacher, Ward 6 and others by Chekhov, but now belongs to me. This particular volume here, the short stories of Anton Chekhov by Modern Library, I could probably get rid of all the Chekhov I have and just keep this volume, because this is the exact same volume that was in my school's library. And the main reason why I wanted it is because it brought up such lovely memories of that time, which was really an escape from all else. And if I could get rid of all these, maybe not this one, because that's got some new stories by him, but if I get rid of all these, that'd be my only Chekhov in this library. Got the works of G.K. Chesterton. I read a lot of G.K. Chesterton, particularly out of this volume right here, in school, though not for school. I liked him a lot as a satirist and just as a general polymath, but that was during my days of atheism, so I didn't necessarily consider his Christianity all that much, so he may be due for a reread. I do have a lot of his novels here, and a few other of his books. A few more random things, and we get my Deepak Chopra collection. We're fans of Deepak up here at the house. These are primarily my mother's books. I've read most of these, but she keeps them here because, you know, I'm the book man, and she has no place else to keep her books, so that's why I have them now. The one that's most notable, I think, is the 7 Spiritual Laws for Success, which is the one that I'm supposed to read and prove to my mother I live by, to where I could live independently. So that's due for another read. Agatha Christie, not read Agatha Christie, unfortunately. I'm sure she's fine. And that's another collection of world short stories with an exercise band. Just a turtle-bound volume I got from school for free. And then some Arthur C. Clarke. Don't really know much about Arthur C. Clarke. I'm sure he's okay. And then Susanna Clarke. This book came in the post one year. Mysteriously, I had no idea who sent it. And then I realized, well, my aunt, who's a writer, was talking to me about it, said that I'd very much like it. And evidently that was from her. So I've not read it, though. We got an Asia Saga by James Clavell, which no doubt will be read here very soon. I don't know, once I get time. We have Brothers Be Yo Like George. Ain't that funkin' kind of hard on you? That's George Clinton's memoir. I got the paperback of it. I got it for Christmas of 2021. And you can see there, it is warped slightly. There's some water damage to some of the pages. That is seawater. I don't want to get into the reasons why. It would be too painful for me to remember. In fact, just forget I even showed this book. Just forget I even showed it. We have The Alchemist by Coelho, which I read once, didn't leave a huge impression on me, so I may need to go back. Waiting for the Barbarians by Coetzee, which is one of the few modern books that I actually liked. Wilkie Collins, by whom I've read The Frozen Deep, was not very impressed by, so I may need to go back and read some of his earlier stuff there. And then we got Joseph Conrad. Got Joseph Conrad here, who I have almost everything by him in Penguins, except for Lord Jim here. Joseph Conrad has the distinction of crafting my favorite line in literature, which comes from Heart of Darkness. I've done a video on that. You can go back and watch it if you want, but I have a bunch of penguins of his. I've got Almaeus Folly, Outcast of the Islands, Tales of Unrest, Hard Darkness, Nostromo, Betwixt Land and Sea, Chance, and Victory. And Lord Jim, just a regular old paperback that's nondescript. Got some copies of Star Wars up there, which I need to watch. The only Star Wars films that exist, 1 through 6. This book here, Adolphe in the Red Notebook by Benjamin Constant, I tried to read many times over the years, but I just couldn't, because I guess the style was a bit alien. It was from the, I guess, late 18th century, and it just didn't resonate too well with me. Maybe I should try it again, because that was when I was around, I don't know, 20 or so, so I should probably do that. Fenimore Cooper's Leather Stocking Tales. This isn't complete by any means, and I still need to read these, so forgive me. Some collections of short stories, and then we got a book on Aborigines. Stephen Crane, who is the only writer of whom I actually have some envy. It's hard to believe that a human wrote some of the things he did. His writing comes from another world. That's all I'm going to say. This right here, Letters from an American Farmer, is supposedly the first piece of American literature. And then we get my Crichton collection, and I have a whole bunch of his. My Jurassic Park and Lost World are just paperbacks now because, well, I'll explain why I got rid of my Barnes & Noble ones when we get to it. But, I got a whole bunch of Crichton, whom I've read many years ago, need to go back to it. Probably start with Jurassic and Lost World, so we'll see. We have Sherlock Holmes for Dummies. That was a Christmas gift from about 10 years ago. Next to John of the Cross. Bastards I've Met by Barry Crump. Barry Crump is a New Zealand bush writer, and his books are very hard to find in my neck of the woods. And I found this for very cheap online, and I got it. Just sort of humorous, like extracts on life and such and all that. If you ever find them around, then give them a read. One thing I should probably mention: this library took about maybe 10 years to grow. And any books that look like this, these black spine Penguin classics, most of them I got for free from my school's library. I had first access to their stock, and so I pilfered quite a number of volumes from there. So we have some Roald Dahl, mostly his adult oriented work, which I've talked about on the channel. I did a live review of My Uncle Oswald. You can look for that if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it. The only children's book of his I have is The Twits, and the only reason I have it is because it was soaked in the rain, or it was getting soaked in the rain at a rummage sale, and I felt bad for it, so I had to rescue it. And it only cost me about $1.25, so that's good. Have a few interesting things here. 2 years before the mast, Richard Henry Dana. That's some local history. Dana Point is literally about 10 minutes drive from where I live, so I may need to read that. Animals of Farthingwood, that is the inspiration for a really demented animated movie or series. I can't remember which one, but may need to look into that. Neanderthal by John Darton is supposedly like a Crichton type book, but I don't know how it is. I've bought it many years ago with the intent of reading it, but now it's just sort of like a novelty item. I may buy it once to read it, or I may read it once just to see how bad it is, but I don't know. We'll see. Charles Darwin, Christian, so these don't apply to me anymore. Then we get one of my favorite writers of all time, Robertson Davies, whom I've done a review of some of his books, but that's most of them there. So, yeah. A few random things here. Samuel Delany's Dark Reflections. That's the only book of his that's readily available, so I bought it. I've not read it, so we'll see. Those are just some self-published books by YouTubers that I was looking into. I haven't read them yet, so we'll see. These books here, these are all by my aunt, Emily Davenport, who's a science fiction writer. And I don't have all of her titles, but I have what I have here, which is good. We'll see some of my uncle's books here soon enough. We have a few random things, a book that I read as a child, and then some Philip K. Dick. Not read them. And then we start with one of my favorite sets of all time, yet more YouTuber books, the Oxford Illustrated Charles Dickens. And then those go from here to all the way down to here. Charles Dickens is one of those writers I need to explore more. I love his prose. In fact, I think he's a master at characterization and wordplay. I just haven't done so because, I just haven't. And The Mouth of Madness is up there, which has the most superfluous commentary track I've ever heard. They literally just talk about lighting for 7 million years. It's so boring. I haven't gone beyond it. But anyway, a few other random things. They're mostly random stuff, and then some Dostoevsky. And then we get to basically my favorite writer of all time, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Not much really to say. This is, I think, mostly his complete works. There may be a few volumes here missing that I don't have. But most notable among here is we have The Narrative of John Smith, which was his first novel. that was lost in the post. And then several years later, actually, like 2 centuries later, it was recovered and published in 2011. I've read sections of it. It's pretty good. Mostly about the medical field. A few other things that are notable. Through the Magic Door is his book on reading and the joy of it. It's very good. I recommend it. Of course, we have my favorite book in the history of existence, The Lost World. I have more than enough copies of that. So, yes. And then we have some of more of his short stories here, like horror stuff mostly, and some of his spiritualist works, Coming of the Fairies, Edge of the Unknown. This here dangerous work is an account of his time on a whaling vessel in Antarctica or the Arctic. I don't remember which one, but it's a very interesting book. I may have to pull it out and show it here one of these days. And then a few other things, some Theodore Dreiser, what's it called? Alexandre Dumas, by whom I've not read I've not read anything by these people. I have read some of Lord Dunsany. Wonder Tales, very interesting influence on Lovecraft, and very interesting fantasist, I must say. We have Gerald and Lawrence Durrell. What the hell is this called? Alexandria Quartet. I've been meaning to read for years, but I will at some point. I'm actually scared to read this particular edition because they're basically brand new. They're very old paperbacks by, what the hell? I don't know the publisher, but they're very old paperbacks. And I'm afraid that if I do end up reading them, I'll crack the binding. So I have to get around that somehow. George Eliot, and then of course, there's Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. George Eliot, whom I plan to read at some point. This book, Adam Bede, was actually in a lounge of a common hold that I used to stay at in my childhood days, that I I decided to take it and read it. I've not read it, and it's been in my possession since 2017. And then we just have several random books there, along with The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I think that's how you say it. Did not enjoy that book at all. I know it's a children's classic. When I read it, whenever it was I read it, it did not really leave a dent on me at all. I may need to go back and reread it, but there is a book of his on aviation, night flight. Yeah, so that may be something. This here, Alex Espinosa, Still Waters. That's one of the books by one of the writers whom I went to see at a luncheon several years ago, because I wanted to be a writer and somebody else wanted to be a writer, and we won a raffle to have lunch with several writers at the time, and there were three of them. He was one. He gave me one of his books, or I bought one of his books, and he signed it. I promised to read it. Have not. It's been, I don't know how many years, but there's that. We got April the 10th, no, April Morning, and Spartacus there by Howard Fast, and then The Never-Ending Story, which needs mentioning. Before I move on, I figured this is also a shelf to us. I may as well show you a couple other things that are on the shelf. This book, Book of Great Books, is just the other day I used this to kill a spider. So that's why there's like paint all over it. It's bound in buckram, which is a process that's used to basically reinforce old books. That's one of the things you learn about when you spend plenty of time in the school library. It's the only book I have that's like that. So, and it's the only book that's heavy enough to kill a spider. This here, actually held up by Charles Darwin, funnily enough, is my King James Bible. I myself use a Cambridge just for everyday use, but this here is the Bible that I got from either an uncle or aunt or cousin. I don't know exactly how they're related to me, but nevertheless, this is the one I received on the 28th of June, 2020, after my father passed away, and that's the one from which I got saved. So there's that. There's a DVD, Animal Farm, the what the hell is this? The Hallmark movie, some random journals, more random journals, DVD or Blu-ray on Africa. Oh, these here are some Elf comics that I bought at a very unassuming comic shop that my brother and myself almost didn't find because it was so nondescript. We passed it several times, but I was able to get these, I think, for $1 each. Or is there a price on them? I don't see a price on them, but they're neat. This and that are the only features of my Elf collection that are on display right now because it's just such a bloody mess. This is one of those wrestling figures that Goontick included in a parcel. That's a button that I need to give my brother, a Snoopy button. And then we have this right here, and that's just some Dimacetaceous earth that I put in the cat's water right there. And this right here is a Vinylmation, a Disney Vinylmation. I used to have a ton of these, but not anymore, or I still do. But this is one of the few that I actually care about now. It's a popcorn design. They're all in the shape of Mickey Mouse, and you print several designs on them. So yeah. Anyway, let's get back to some books, shall we? Moving down to this shelf here, we have Faulkner. I've not read Faulkner. I'm thinking I have this volume here, the portable Faulkner, because it has the bear in it, and I'm thinking I would read that and determine whether I like him or not. There's some Henry Fielding, Tom Jones, and Henry Andrews. I've not read those. A couple Timothy Finley books. I read a little bit of The Butterfly Plague. It's basically a Hollywood type of novel. And I've not read The Wars, so we'll see how those go. Just a random book on the South Pacific. Then we have F. Scott Fitzgerald, by whom I've only read The Great Gatsby, which I'm not so crazy about. I'm not as crazy about that book as other people are. It's just, I don't know. I read it once on my own and then once for school, and I thought, okay, it's fine. You know, what's the big deal about? By the cover, you think it's going to be like a futuristic type of novel because you see those city lights there. It makes it look as though that it's going to take place far in the future, but really it's in the 1920s. Yeah, I don't understand that completely, but nevertheless. Past some Flaubert, whom I've done a review on one of his books, November, which I no longer have because I hated it. We have the James Bond series. I don't even think this is all of them, but the one I've read is Casino Royale, which I liked a fair bit, even though I read it a long time ago. So I'm going to have to revisit this series at some point here. Book on watch repair, which obviously I used to be very much into watches, and my cousin got me that. It's a very dry read, but it's very informative. So there's that. We have a few random things there, and then some Forster, E.M. Forster, who coincidentally wrote probably my favorite short story, The Machine Stops, which basically predicted to contemporary society. We have Alan Dean Foster's, some of his novels, as well as some of his novelizations. His books are pretty rare to find, but this one I got from the library. What the hell's this? Glory Lane. This one I got from the library for free because the cover was striking. This one, Midworld, I had to go to a specialty bookshop to get because that's one of BookTuber's favorites. I wanted to read it. The Alien novelization I got at a rummage sale. The Black Hole, I forget where, probably a friend's library. They didn't even know what it was. And Maori, I had to buy online because you can't get that anywhere, and I wanted that for a specific reason. So, a few other things: Fox's Book of Martyrs, some John Fowles. We have a Penguin Island by Anatole France, which I read at 16. I did not understand it, probably because I was an atheist back then, and it's like a Christian allegory, so I'll have to reread that at some point. We have here the Diary of Anne Frank. We have 2 copies of that. We have a Penguin version, and then we have a turtle-bound version that I got free from school, which I like quite a bit. You know myself and my history with Holocaust literature. I don't find it very gripping, particularly. But the more I've heard about this book, the more keen I am at actually visiting it, because, you know, she's a writer and she talks a lot about her process and all that and wanting to become a writer. So that'd be interesting. Yeah, just a book on watch repair there. Just something, some more books on my professional life or failed professional life. The Damnation of Theron Ware. A few other random things. This Earl Stanley Gardner I've had for several years. 7 complete novels. I thought about getting rid of it, but I just didn't get around to it. It's just, I don't know, a nice little placeholder. It looks nice, but it really isn't that nice. So, I don't know. It's interesting. Then we have a bunch of random stuff, and then we get to William Golding, by whom I've read Lord of the Flies back in, sophomore year high school. I liked it okay. I liked The Inheritors a lot more. That has to do with Neanderthal men. And apparently, from what Logan Albright says, he did not very much like The Spire. But I don't know. We'll have to see just what he's all about. So we'll have to look more into him. Vicar of Wakefield is hilarious. By Oliver Goldsmith. If you haven't read that yet, it's quite a hoot, even though it's been written, I don't know how long ago. Just a random book on the Book of Job, and this Sherlock Holmes biography, which is like a fictional biography. It's a weird title. I don't even know why I have it. It's a gift, so I can't really get rid of it. So, Wind in the Willows, which I read for the first time when I was 16, and then read it again when I was 19, and then I think I'm due for another reread. It's one of my favorite classic children's books there. So, moving on past Robert Graves, we have Graham Greene. I don't have all of his books, but that's a good number of them. I have not read Graham Greene yet, except for his short stories. So, we'll see what that has in store. This green, and that's just like a protractor, I think. This green book there, the one at the very end, that's part 2 of a Sherlock Holmes pastiche. A bunch of Sherlock Holmes pastiches in here, not of my own volition, but just because they were gifts. So, now I need to see if I can focus this mug. Okay, so then we have a few other weird things here. Black Like Me. The Adventure of Simplicissimus is a German novel that
plays a very big role in the book I'm writing. Basically has to do with someone who retreats from worldly existence because of how absurd of it is, and then seeks out life as a hermit. So it's an interesting book there. Very trippy, I must say. It was written in the 17th or 18th century. I don't remember when, but Haytrider Haggard, whom I'm yet to read, I'm very keen to read, and this, what the hell is this? The Robert Van Gulik, like a Dutch or something mystery writer, whose books are very hard to get. A few other things there, and then Thomas Hardy, whom I have not read. Nathaniel Hawthorne, The Blithedale Romance is a utopian book in which, the efficacy of certain things about utopia is challenged, and I reference this in my novel, in which I challenge the whole notion of the concept itself. So, yeah, a few other random things there, and then Hemingway. I quite like Hemingway, though I've not read him in a long time. So who knows how he holds up. O. Henry volumes. We have June, and a couple other sequels to June. I've not read June yet because I'm waiting on my brother to read it. We've started several minor book clubs together, and we've never finished it because he works and such. So yeah, we have to carve out some time in order to get through June. Supposedly, it's like the greatest thing since, I don't know, the Pavlova, but who knows? We'll see. There's some Herman Hesse and a random book about pipes. I don't smoke, but it's there just for research. And then we get some books by James Hilton, which is one of my favorite writers. He wrote Goodbye, Mr. Chips, which is one of my favorite books, as well as Lost Horizon, which I'm yet to read, though I look very much forward to it. That may actually be one of my next reads, to be honest with you, because it's been so long. A few other things, some William Hope Hodgson, and then we get into my uncle's books. Ernest Hogan is a science fiction writer, and his main concern is like Chicano affairs and futurism and such and all that. So his books are Cortez on Jupiter, High Aztec, Smoking Mirror Blues. His most recent release is Gorilla Mural and Siren Song, which is a short story collection. All very good, and I recommend you support him, Ernest Hogan, and my aunt, who's just up there, Emily Davenport, and they'd very much appreciate it. So, thank you. One thing I should note probably is that this book, The Story of Dr. Wassel by James Hilton, I've done a review on. So if you're interested in my thoughts on that book, I liked it, but if you want a more in-depth take on it, search for that review. It's quite an old one. All right, the next we have Lee Hogan, who is the pseudonym for my aunt, again, one of them. You'll see that she has several. Her duology, Belarus and the Enemies, right there. Check those out. And then we got 3 copies of The Private Memoirs and Confessions of a Justified Sinner by James Hogg. Of course, this book is extremely important to me. It helped me realize just what a sham organized religion is and how dangerous really it could be. And I recommend this book to everyone. It's very difficult to find, but you can find it. By all means, find it. And then this book here, People Who Knew Me, Kim Hooper, that's the second of the authors whom I'd met at that luncheon. Once again, I signed that copy, or I signed it. She signed it for me. and I said I'd read it. I've not read it yet, so we'll see how that is. A few other things there. Only one Conan book, unfortunately, Conan the Warrior. So, but we do have Tales from the Kalalu Mythos by Robert E. Howard, which is nice. I talked about this volume extensively in one video. It's obviously the inspiration for my very first story, Egypticus, which I'm going to rewrite at some point, so yeah. Couple random things. Battlefield Earth and Mission Earth, that's not complete, by L. Ron Hubbard. I'm not a Scientologist, but L. Ron Hubbard was a science fiction writer before he found his religion, so I'm curious as to his work. Then we have a couple books by William Henry Hudson, A Crystal Age, which is a horrible utopian book. It has no real ending, or it ends, but it's kind of like, what in the world? Did he die as he was narrating what's going on? How in the hell was this book ever even written? I don't know. It's strange. Then we have Green Mansions, which I reread recently, and obviously that's one of my favorites. Little love story in the Amazon rainforest. And then we have Long Ago and Far Away, or Far Away and Long Ago. I forget which one it is. Which is like a memoir of his growing up in Argentina, which is very interesting. Just a couple random books. Then we got Victor Hugo. I finally was able to secure a copy of The Man Who Laughs, which is in this big volume here. That's probably the only reason why I have it, is because it's got The Man Who Laughs. It has Les Mis and Hunchback, which I also have, but I don't have The Man Who Laughs, so that's interesting. I'll have to get into them at some point. And a few things there to round off this shelf. We've got some Aldous Huxley, whom was one of my favorite writers back in school, but whom I've not read a lot of back, just recently. Got Brave New World there, scary book, and Brave New World Revisited, which, if you don't know, Ahab was a bit perplexed. Brave New World Revisited is basically a collection of essays, or one essay in particular, in which Huxley, I suppose, celebrates his prescience and comments on, what things from his book came true in society 20 years later. So my film is just about run out on this camera, and my voice is just about run out, and I'm starting to be more and more inundated with phlegm and mucus, so I'm going to go ahead and shut this video off. I showed you the first, I guess you'd call this the right wall as you walk into the garage of this library, and I'm going to have to quit for now, and we'll show you the left wall on part 2. So, thank you.